Welcome back to the Rise Above podcast. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by Ole Miss football coach and a guy I met a few years ago, Sawyer Jordan. First off, Sawyer, thank you so much for being on with us today.
Absolutely, man. It's a pleasure. I've kept up quite a bit, so I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
Yes, sir. And it was awesome how we were able to meet through a guy that's made a huge impact in my life. And I know someone that's made a huge impact in your life too, Coach Morris. And that was an awesome night when we were able to meet. It was probably about almost 3 years ago.
Yeah, almost 3 years ago, man. I tell you what, I'm repping Coach Morris's his hat right here, the Gridiron Ranch. But Coach Morris has had a tremendous impact on my life. I was with him when I was a student assistant at Clemson. He was the offensive coordinator, and I just learned so much from him there. And then when I was at USF, he came back as a senior analyst, and we just got to spend a lot of time together. We were both off the field. At that time, the off-the-field guys couldn't coach during practice, so we would stand there in practice and share stories, and he would mentor me and give me a lot of advice. So it's funny to see how it all comes together, man. But I remember, I want to say was it the Tulsa game? I think
Yes,
it was
yeah,
the
Tulsa
Tulsa
game.
game. Yeah,
Yep.
you came and spoke to our team, man. And I know it was all the players were super impacted by what the Lord shared through you, and it's cool to be here now for sure.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I was super encouraged by you and so many other people I met that night too. And I think it's cool that your coaching journey technically started at Clemson. Can you talk about a little bit about how your coaching journey started?
Yeah, so my dad was a longtime high school football coach down in Conway, South Carolina, and ever since I was a little kid, I'd be down, on the field and on the sidelines and at practice, and I just remember just seeing how former players would come up to him and how not only he taught them football, but he taught them how to be men, he taught them how to be fathers, and just the impact he had on them. So I say that because Coach Sweeney, when he was an assistant at Clemson, recruited my dad's area and kind of got tied in with my dad just through recruiting and on the trail and everything. So my senior year, it was like I can either go play football at a small school or I can go learn from the best of the best at Clemson and be a student assistant, help out with the offense. So started there. Obviously, Coach Sweeney had a great impact on my life, just seeing a godly leader and what it takes and what it looks like. And then obviously, like we talked about, Chad Morris, he was our offensive coordinator. He left to go to SMU. I stayed a couple more years until graduation. I graduated. I went to the University of Louisiana Lafayette. I was a tight end quality control guy. And then when Jeff Scott, who was at Clemson with us, when he got the head coach job at USF, I went with him as a GA. Ended up being an analyst, and then fast forward, time flies, man. Then I went to
Yeah,
Coastal.
it's crazy.
I went to Coastal Carolina as the quarterback analyst. That was actually where I'm from. That's where my dad coached high school ball in Conway. So I just knew it was a great opportunity to be at home with my parents, at least for a year, and just kind of get back into my church that my dad helped start. That was a true blessing. But I knew I didn't want to be there long term. I had the opportunity to come to Ole Miss. So last year I was here as the wide receiver GA, and this year I'll be coaching the inside receiver. So it's a crazy coaching world, but you meet a whole lot of people, and it's a fun ride for sure.
That's awesome. I'm sure you've built a lot of great relationships along the journey too. Something I wanted to ask about because I love how you started at Clemson because I love seeing different videos of Dabo Sweeney talking about their culture. Can you talk a little bit about the culture at Clemson while you were there?
Yeah, man, it was fun to see. I happened to be there at a really good time. We won the first national championship when I was there. Since 1981. That was in 2016, but it really starts before that. Coach Sweeney always preaches about a belief, having a belief not only that you're going to win, but that you're going to execute, that you can believe in each team, each teammate, and each brother, each coach. And that belief comes from a higher belief, like to really have true belief. I feel like you have to have belief from the Lord, and just seeing the belief is really what preaches to the culture there. And it really and truly is like a family. Like they call it the Clemson family, and I was very blessed to see that culture firsthand and see how to build a program, see how to treat people, see how to build a brotherhood between coaches and players and coworkers, and then ultimately seeing it all come together and win the national championship. Man, it's definitely a unique culture for sure.
That's so awesome. And there's a video I love on YouTube of a kid that has Down syndrome that helped with their team. Was he there when you were there?
Yeah, Dave
Yep.
Seville, man, he is a complete joy to be around, man. Everybody loves him. He does a great job. He brings a unique energy to to practice, to the games, and that preaches to the culture as well, man. He's treated just like every other person, every other manager. So he was definitely there, and he's a joy to be around.
What was one of your best memories you had in your time at Clemson?
Ooh, man. Um, that's a great question.
Yeah,
I would probably,
you were when everything was like going amazing, like the best time of Clemson football history.
I would probably say it's going to be cliche, but seeing Hunter Renfro catch the game-winning pass at the Natty, because Hunter and I actually grew up together. We met when we were probably 2 years old. My dad was the head coach at Conway. His dad was the head coach at a high school called Sockastee, which is 15 minutes down the road. And they used to take a group to FCA camp in Black Mountain, North Carolina. So ever since I was able to walk and talk, me and Hunter have been locked in, and all the way up through high school. We lived together in college, and just knowing that our relationship was built on Christ, it was good to have, especially in college, it was good to have, Christian brothers around you. Another guy is Robert Jolly. He actually lives in Fayetteville, Arkansas. His wife ran
Yeah, his
track.
wife's a runner, right?
Yeah. But just seeing, all that come together, and then have like one of your best friends make the play that wins the national championship, it was pretty surreal, man. And then getting to hug his neck on the sideline after, it was that's probably got to be my top memory from when I was there.
That's so amazing. And did he win the Burlsworth Award?
He did, yeah, he did win
It's
the
crazy because
Burlsworth.
I'm wearing that hoodie right now.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
Brandon Burlsworth, is that right?
Yes, yeah,
He
Brandon
was a former
Burlsworth.
Arkansas player.
Yes, yeah, he has
Yeah.
an amazing story. It's actually a movie, great story.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, he did win that. He did win that award.
That's awesome. And I like how you talked about how you guys really connected through your faith. How did your faith journey start?
Man, so I credit a lot of it to just the people that God put in my life at an early age. I was blessed, to have parents that we grew up in the church family. So my dad, I just saw growing up, I saw my dad every Wednesday at the high school practices. He would have a FCA, so he would have a word of the day. He would have a verse. He'd have a story, and before practice even started, it'd be a 15-minute FCA, and just seeing that from a young age, and seeing how it impacted people's lives, in a good way was definitely encouraging. And then I grew up going to these FCA camps, like these state conferences, and then it was a high school or it was middle school, but I was going since I was 4 or 5, because my dad would always take a group of players, and getting to meet people like Hunter and then Robert, and having a true friendship and a true connection from people that didn't even live in the same town. I mean, they weren't far away, but just going to those FCA, hearing the speakers from a young age. We had my dad actually he helped start a church. My dad and 2 other guys started a church called the Rock Church in Conway, and growing up, getting to be a part of that and seeing what the Lord did through that church, it just had a big impact on me, man. And I've been blessed to be around a lot of guys that love the Lord and show, like, were good examples for me to kind of how to walk with the Lord through sports and just through life in general.
That's awesome. And that's so awesome you had that faith, because we really can't always control what's going on around us, but just to be able to know that, like, even throughout whatever happens, God still has a plan, and just have joy despite what's going on. And
No doubt.
I know for you, there's been a lot of different places you've been the past couple of years, and there's been a lot of different changes with schools you've been at. What's been some of the biggest ways that your faith has helped you?
I think really just having that ultimate faith that the Lord does indeed have a plan. Like he's not going to throw you into the fire without standing right next to you. Like you might be in the fire. It's going to feel like you're in the fire sometimes.
Exactly.
But just having that belief that he is right there guiding you through it. I think that's really kind of the thing that I've always leaned on. And every time a job opportunity or something comes up, man, I go to the Lord in prayer, and I feel like He speaks to me through that decision, and then when I do go through with a certain decision, I know He's with me through it all, the good and the bad and everything in between, man. So I just think having that ultimate belief that He indeed does have a plan, and it might not be rainbows and sunshine sometimes, but He's working in your life, the people you meet, and you never know, who you might come in contact with that doesn't know the Lord. And I think that's, a cool thing about bouncing around is you just meet so many different people, so many that you learn from, and then some that, you might not even realize are learning from you in some ways.
Yeah, no, I love what you said there too about you should never know who you'll come in contact with that doesn't know the Lord. I think that's a true testament to always walking by faith, because you just never know who you'll come across that needs your light at just the right time.
No
And
doubt.
over this past year, what's it been like being at Ole Miss, being at SEC school?
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting. Um, it's different than I thought, though, in terms of, I thought it was kind of like, you hear SEC, like
Yeah,
you're just going to work from, 5 a.m. to midnight every day. And it's going to be a grind, and you're not even going to enjoy it. That couldn't be farther from the truth. Now we work a lot. Okay. And we work efficiently. But I think the main thing that I got from here is, there's no egos here, which surprised me a little bit. And our offensive coordinator is Charlie Weiss. He's like 31 years old or something, and our
wow.
defensive coordinator is like one of the best in the business. And they have zero ego. They don't think they're greater than anybody else in the program, and all of our position coaches are like that too. So that was definitely refreshing, and it was cool to see how it was different than I would expect, but in a positive way.
That's awesome. And over this past year at Ole Miss, what's been some of the biggest? Has there been any times you've been able to look back and say, "God, I'm just thankful for this," or something that's happened?
Oh man, I mean, every game before we step on the field, this started back when I was in Clemson. I'll walk around the stadium, and I'll just spend some time with the Lord. I'll put in some peaceful meditation music on Spotify, and then I'll just spend some time with him, try to drown out everything else, and just be in all of his glory, and his presence, and just thankful and grateful that He's put me in a place, you know, in a stadium that holds 100,000, like when we were at LSU, or like, it's when all of our home games, the stands are packed out. Like growing up, that's what I used to watch on TV, So I just always thank Him, like, Lord, thank you for bringing me to this moment. Like, let me be a light today, because I used to dream of this, like I have no choice but to be thankful. Like who would I be to not be grateful for the opportunity? I don't
And
deserve it.
yeah, that's so awesome. And you get to play with and your coach is what many people consider like the coolest coach in college football.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But what's one of the most rewarding things about coaching players for you?
Um, I think just meeting the different players and forming relationships with them. Um, it's cool to see him catch touchdowns. It's cool to see him, pancake block. But when you see him, when you call them 5 years down the road and see that they're doing great, or they're about to get married, or they just had a kid, I think that's probably the coolest thing. And just to stay in contact with with all those players. It's not a 4-year rental, like they're yours for life. And you get to spend, some time with them every so often. And I think just watching them, and I'm still young, so I'm not going to sit here and be like watching them grow into men.
I'm like, I know you're super young.
I'm still in my walk too. So it's still cool to see them, how they're more than just a football player. They're more than just an athlete. And I think that's probably the coolest thing.
No, that's really cool. And being the Rise Above podcast, has there been some ways over this past year, being in a new environment, that God's taught you how to rise above?
Yeah, I've been pretty fortunate to be in some really good situations. But I look back 2 years ago, and we got fired at USF. They brought in a new staff. That's the nature of the business, and I wanted so badly to be bitter. I wanted to be mad, and because I love Tampa, I love my community there, and I was just like, man, like Coach Scott does everything the right way. Like we treat everyone right. Like, how doesn't it work out? And like now I'm looking for a job. I can't even find a job. And our offensive coordinator that was at USF our last year ended up getting a coastal job. And I got to go spend a year with my family, which is, insane in this business, really. And that really, man, it just shows you one of my best friends in the world, Cole Watson. He actually came on staff at Coastal as well. So just having that community where you were at the lowest, and you couldn't figure out, why things were happening and why it didn't work out. And then to get into a situation where your mom and your dad are right there. My brother, his wife, and his daughter were an hour down the road. I got one of my best friends in the world, in the same city as me. It just shows you that the Lord truly does have a plan, and He is always with you. So that's probably my rise above.
That's so awesome. It's so cool to look back and see the faithfulness of God.
No doubt.
It reminds me so much of John 13:7, where it says, "What's happening right now you might not understand, but later you will." And
100%.
I think that's just one of the coolest things to look back and say, sure, God was faithful such a long time ago when the Bible was written. He's faithful a few years ago in our own life, and He's faithful now too. It's such a great reminder. I know even for myself, looking at the future, be like, hey, I don't know what's to come, but God's always been faithful, and He will not stop now.
Right, 100%. Like, and to think that anything would change would be selfish, Like,
Exactly.
and to understand that even if it might not be what you want it to be in that moment, like God is still good and He is still faithful.
Yeah, that's so awesome just to be reminded of. Like, even if the worst comes to worst, everything goes wrong, like you can still have joy every day by putting a focus on Jesus, others, then us, which I know
Right.
I need to be reminded of daily.
Right. Oh, I lost it. Hold on a second.
We'll be good. We can just take that out.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're good.
You still got me on here?
Yeah, I can still hear. Did my screen something happen, Luke?
Oh, there we go.
We're back. Okay, we'll just cut that out. Perfect. Okay,
Sorry.
Sweet.
But yeah,
okay.
no, it reminds me of a story in the Bible when Joseph, like back in Genesis, when Joseph was sold by his brothers, right? And he was sold into slavery. And I think it's in Genesis 38, maybe. I'd have to look back. But he's sold into slavery. And it's like the worst thing in the world, right? He's thrown into prison eventually. And God gives him the ability to interpret dreams. So he interprets these dreams and then ends up getting back to the Pharaoh, to summarize here, but ends up getting back to the Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's having these dreams that a famine's coming to the land, but first abundance is coming to the land. So it's going to be abundance, and so he's able to interpret these dreams. So what happens is they can save all this bread and wheat and everything. So when the famine does come, they still have all the food and everything. So eventually, what happens was the worst thing in the world for him, right? Getting sold by his brothers into slavery. They told his dad he died. And then to come out on the other side, ended up pretty much saving the world. It just shows you that God indeed has a plan and God is truly faithful. And then he ends up, reconnecting with his brothers and everything. But That story, I read that the other day, and it really like kind of stood out to me, man. Like, you can go from what you think is the worst, but if you just trust God, like he is truly faithful and he will work it out.
Yeah, no, that is so true. And it's so cool how we put our trust in Christ, even in the lowest valley or the worst fire we could be in. Just like it says in Ephesians 3:20, Christ can truly do immeasurably more in us than we could ever think of or imagine.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
moving forward, I know going into this year, you guys definitely have big goals, but what are some goals you have for yourself in this next year?
Yeah, so this is a good question because when we were at the bowl game, I had all the wide receivers give me their 2025 New Year's resolutions. So I don't know if you mean goals in terms of football, but I'm just going to give you my goals in terms of everything. But
No, that's perfect.
yeah, so number one was read the Bible in a year. So I've been going through that right now. Number two is to get involved in a small group. It's sometimes it's hard for us, man, when we're moving around and getting really truly plugged in. So I actually have a small group meeting on Wednesday, so we're going to check that one off. Win a pickleball tournament.
Oh, let's go.
I love to compete. I love playing pickleball. So win a pickleball tournament. And then in terms of football wise, I think just show up every day, and have great energy and have joy. And then so like, I just want to be a light. And if I come in with my head down and I'm ticked off every day, I'm not being, what God created me to be. And ever since I was a little kid, I had a crazy amount of energy and crazy amount of joy. And I don't plan on growing up anytime soon, man. So that's probably my goal for this season, this spring is to just continue to bring joy and be a light.
No, I love that. It reminds me so much of a quote that Coach Morris has told me. You've probably heard, but I love it so much. I share with teams all the time when I speak to them, and I tell them I'm going to be at your practice too, because I'm like, the only way I can hear you guys is if you bring the juice. And I always tell them, like what Coach Morris told me: if you're juiceless, you're useless.
No doubt.
But if you're juiceful, you're useful. I just love that quote so much.
100%, man, 100%. And I firmly believe that. I remember him telling me that back in the Clemson days, and it's obviously stuck with me, man, because I sure do like to bring the juice. But
yes, sir. And it just makes, I know for football, like even through some of those hard practices, it just makes it fun.
No doubt, 100%. And it because it's contagious, right? Like if you're not bringing juice, the odds are a lot of other people aren't going to bring juice. But the more juice that you bring, the more juice is going to rub off on somebody else. And you're right, man. It makes it fun. It makes it enjoyable for sure.
Yes, sir. And then moving forward, whether you're at Ole Miss or wherever you end up at, if there's something that people can know you for, what would you want that to be?
That's a great question, man. I think treating people the right way. I pray to God all the time, like, Lord, help me see people like you see them. Help me love people like you love them. And I think, that desire for me is what I want to be known for. I want to, treat people the right way, treat them not only how they want to be treated, but how God would treat them, like how Jesus would treat them, when he was walking the earth. And I'm not going to be able to do that. I understand that, he was obviously perfect. But I feel like, that's probably the main thing I want to be known for. Like, it's cool to know football. It's cool to be able to, draw plays up and scheme up defenses. But, people don't remember the 3rd and 7 call that you drew up versus, Arkansas State. They remember, how you treated them, how you made them feel, because that's something that they can carry on. And I know I'm rambling a little bit, but like, when you think about it, like, you're in a wide receiver room, right? There's probably about 18 to 20 people. No, odds are 2 maybe are going to become coaches. Okay, so your 3rd and 8 call, all right, or how you installed a certain route, after those guys graduate, there's 2 people that might use it. Might.
Yeah.
But if you treat them the right way, if you love your players hard, then now 20 of those guys can can do the same thing upon graduation. So I think that's probably, my goal in life, is to love the players and to treat them the right way.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned love right there because I love how it talks about that in 1 Corinthians 13, how it says you can have all of these gifts, but if you don't have love, you have nothing. And I
Mm.
think that is so contagious. Reminds me of something my high school coach, who was a huge mentor of mine that I still talk to you about every week, he used to always tell us our job as coaches is to love you guys, and your job as players is to love each other.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome, man. I love that right there. That's great. And it's like you said, man, you can have everything in the world. If you don't have love, it means nothing.
yes,
So
sir. And then obviously, listening to this today, there's going to be someone, whether it's a diagnosis or just adversity they're facing throughout their day. They're just going through something tough. What's an encouraging message that you'd have for them?
man, I think, we've talked about the Lord being faithful. The Lord's really put it on my heart lately, to compete. Like, I love competition. I love competing. It's fun to do. But it doesn't have to be a sport, right? There is an enemy that is trying to attack. He's lying, stealing. He's trying to attack you every single day. And it might be a diagnosis you might get. It might be not getting the job you might, want. It could be a number of things, and that enemy, that opponent's hitting you, right? Like, that's not easy to always understand. That's not easy to always take in. But with the Lord comes true victory, And like, for me, I love competition. It fuels me, right? So like, when the enemy tries to come into my life, whether it's a number of things, whether it's social media, whether it's gossip, or he's trying to reel me in, right, into sin. And just having that faith that with the Lord there is true victory, and there is no competition. Like, if you truly believe in the Lord and you truly stand firm in the faith, that you'll win that battle every time. So I think, just compete, fight. It's not always easy. It's hard. It's definitely hard. It's hard to get, news you don't want to get. It's hard to walk in the Christian walk. If there's a lot of distraction, there's a lot of things
Yeah.
out there. It's all the enemy. So we got to compete, man. We got to fight. We got to fight back. And with the Holy Spirit, we have true victory over the enemy. So
And that's so true. About with the Holy Spirit, we have true victory. Reminds me so much of John 16:33, where it says, um, in this life, you will face trials, but take heart, for Jesus has overcome this world.
mm,
And I think that's, as you talked about, competing in life, like we're competing against the devil every day. And we have the greatest hope. And I think it's so important to, just like it says in 1 Corinthians 9:24, how all runners in a race run, but only one gets the prize. It's so important, like you said, in competing, to run in such a way to win.
that's right, man. And it. And I think it's important to surround yourself.
Yep, that's
Um,
so key.
like, it's important to have teammates. You can't do it by yourself. Now, Jesus is the ultimate teammate, but it's like in Proverbs 27:17, it says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. It's important to have teammates. It's important to have accountability partners. It's hard enough as it is, but it's way harder alone. Um, so, obviously Jesus is the ultimate victory. He's the ultimate teammate, the ultimate coach. But you got to have teammates. You got to have people in your corner that are walking with you, or competing with you, right? And I think another thing that I would, that I would advise anyone that might be listening to get in the Word, man. And I struggled with it for a long time. I wanted to get in the Word, and I couldn't find the right time, man. When you get in that Word talks, man, and
It does. It's so
it
true.
it talks to you, and some things might confuse you. There'll be answers for it. You don't have to understand it all at once, but it talks to you, and the Lord definitely speaks through His Word, man. So. Like, I'm just going off the competition piece. Get some teammates, and the game plan's right in front of you, man. The game plan is God's word. I remember back in, when I was growing up to these FCA, going to these FCA conferences and camps, they would give out Bibles and it would say the game plan on it. Like, that is the true game plan. You want the answers to the test? They're right here. And so, like, for me, the answer, when I truly understood the answers are right here, like, why wouldn't I read it?
Exactly.
Why wouldn't I open up the game plan that shows me how to walk with Christ? So that would be my advice.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned how important it is to surround yourself with people that are walking with Christ and to get in the Word, because just like it says in Hebrews, which this image really stood out to me a few days ago, where it said God's Word is stronger than any two-edged sword, or stronger than any two-edged
Yep.
sword. And I was like, dang, that
Yeah.
that is strong. I mean, I wouldn't want to get hit by one of those.
No doubt. And I remember that. It's actually funny. Another FCA camp deal, but we had a speaker one time, and I wish I could remember his name. But before we read, everybody had to make like a sword sound. Like, we like, shing, and we would read the word. And that like it paints this picture that it is a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the word is a weapon against the enemy. And I love that. But you're right, man. It is sharper than any two-edged sword. I wouldn't want to get hit with one of those.
Yeah, no. Yes, sir. But I appreciate you being on with us today. And one last thing I'd love to ask you is, as we're getting off today, is there a verse, whether it's in your life or recently, that's really stood out to you and encouraged you?
I just keep going back to the Proverbs 27:17, man. I mean, it really is truly my favorite verse, because I've always been a people person growing up, and it took me a while to rid of my ego and realize I can't do it alone, and I'm not the best at anything, but like I said, iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. If you surround yourself with the right people and people that have your best interest in mind and want to be like Jesus as well, then you're just going to sharpen each other and you're just going to keep getting better, right? That's the name of the game. We always just want to keep getting better and better. So that verse has been on my heart for a long time. I remember my dad used to have it on a poster in the field house in the locker room back in high school. But yeah, man, that's really the verse that I love and that really speaks to me.
Yeah, no, I love that verse, and it's so applicable to what I love about the Bible is, as you mentioned, how strong it is. When you go to the game plan for life, as you mentioned, the Bible is, it literally has verses for any situation that we could face in life, and stories like you mentioned too in Jeremiah, or as you mentioned in Genesis, that of things that might happen a long time ago, but things that literally you go to God, man, you can use that in your life and it can help guide you through whatever situation you face.
No doubt, and that's the one thing I love about it, man. Is it's got answers for everything.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for something, if you're looking for guidance, and you're looking for satisfaction, it's hard to understand sometimes, but the world is not going to give it to you. It's not a national championship that's going to give it to you. There's not a touchdown pass that's going to give it to you. There's not a relationship that's going to give it to you. The true peace, true joy, and true satisfaction only comes from one place, and that's Jesus. And in His Word, He will answer any questions you may have. He will encourage you in a billion different ways, and He'll really teach you how to truly love others.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you so much for being on with us today, Sawyer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, and I just want to say, man, I really appreciate what you do, man, and your story spoke to me. It's easy to, say, man, I couldn't imagine that, and not being in that situation, but to see the joy that you have, to see how you approach life every day, after, losing your sight and which is something that some people couldn't even comprehend, but seeing how you truly bring joy every day and attack each day and how you compete against the enemy every day, man, it is a true inspiration. And I just want to let you know that you're not just inspiring me, man. You're inspiring a whole bunch of people, and it's fun to see the Lord work through you and your story, man.
I appreciate it, and it's been so awesome meeting people like you. And what you said right there just speaks so much to the importance of getting in the Word and then surrounding yourself with great people. Because including me, we all face tough days, but it's so important to know where our hope truly comes from at the end of the day.
Right. And I know this is your podcast, but I'm going to flip it on you. What's one verse that stuck out to you recently and kind of spoke to you?
There's been let me think recently. Honestly, probably we mentioned it beforehand. Actually, this has probably been my verse all throughout college, but this helps me in navigating around different areas. But Proverbs 3:5-6 is something I had to repeat in my head time after time as I was finding my way around the University of Arkansas, and sometimes knew where I was going, sometimes ran into a trash can that I had no idea was there. But where it says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart, lean not on your own understandings, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight.
That's awesome, man.
And that what really stood out to me from that one is where it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, not just like, oh, I'm going to trust in the Lord a little bit, but then I'm going to try to do my own thing a little bit.
Right.
Dude, what I tell people is when I try to do my own thing a little bit, that's usually when I'm physically more lost than ever and in my head more lost than ever too.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember that reminds me of a quote this guy said. It's actually at an FCA camp. You can see how impactful FCA camps have been on my life. But he said, if he's not the Lord of all, he's not the Lord at all. Like speaking personally.
Oh, wow, that's so good. Speaking
like personally to your situation, like he's not, just someone to go to whenever you need help. And it's not, just something you put, oh, well, I'll use him for my family, but not my job. Like I'll love him and I'll follow him in my relationships, but not my work or not my sport. But if he's not Lord of all, of everything in your life, he's not Lord at all. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the verse you shared, man. But that's so awesome, man.
Yeah, it reminds me so much right there of Luke 9:23 too, where it talks about how it's so important to take up our cross daily. And like you talked about, you're trying to read the whole Bible during the whole year. And someone reminded me a few months ago that I had on the podcast how like a lot of times people that grew up in church think, oh, I heard the gospel when I was a kid, or I accepted Christ then. I don't need to hear it when I go to church on Sunday. But it really is so important to be reminded of the gospel every day and reminded of the power that is behind it.
100%, man. Every day. It's that competition every single day. And that's, there's power in it, man. There's power in it. So we'd be selfish not to get into it every day.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. To everyone who has listened to this episode of the Rise Above podcast. If you want to hear this episode and many more like this in the future, you can continue to support the Rise Above podcast by subscribing on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts at, and writing a review of a way this podcast has helped you in your own life. And one final thing you can do is share this podcast with someone else. Because the awesome thing about rising above is when you're truly able to rise above in life, you're not just doing it by yourself. You're bringing others along the way. So as I'm trying to help others rise above and others are helping me rise above, you can also do your friends a favor and help them rise above by encouraging them with this podcast.